Hey everyone. Sorry this took a few days to make. I know that the discussion board may not necessarily be the place that I need to make a video. I wanted to make a video this week just to let you know what we're doing with the readings for this week and next week. But I also want to do some light housekeeping and let you know a couple things that are going on with the class and some things that are going on with me that won't be an issue, but just kind of want to fill you in on everything. So before we get started, I want to talk about the readings. I set up a Remind app on my phone so I can, I think I mentioned this before, I'll be able to reach out to you all much easier. You don't need to download an app, but I have an app on my phone so that you can join the class. To do that, if you want to join this thing, if you text this number, so put it up on the screen, text the number at the top there, 81010, and then text at SGWYNKOOP, so SG and my last name. Text that code to that number, 81010, and you should be able to join the class right away. It'll be English 101-11. And what this does is you'll be joined in the class on my app that I have, and if I need to contact you, I can contact the class through your phone rather than email. If you need to contact me, you can text that number and it'll go to my phone like a text. So this way we can communicate a little faster. It's easier for me to keep track of all my students because they're labeled better in there, and it's quicker. It's been working pretty well so far with some other classes. So if you have questions about that, let me know. But if you have a phone, you should be able to do it. And it doesn't exchange phone numbers, so you won't have my phone number. I will not have your phone number. It goes anonymously through the app. So some of you may have used it before, but if not, it's just a really handy way to stay connected. Now, why that's kind of really important right now, I just want to let you know a couple things that are happening. I have to cancel my office hours on campus for the next couple weeks. So I will only be on campus during my scheduled class times, which is Tuesday, Thursday, 8, 1, and 5:30. I won't be having office hours in between those times because I am finding myself a foster dad to some pups. Me and my girlfriend had sort of an unfortunate event happen over the weekend. Her parents' dog has been pregnant, and she gave birth during the snowstorm, and she had some complications, and unfortunately by the time we got her to the vet, it just wasn't looking good. She had 5 puppies overall, still had one that she wasn't able to pass, and we had to put her down. So we have the puppies with us. That wasn't the plan, so I'm going to be kind of working a lot more from home now for the next couple weeks so we can take care of them, make sure that they sort of getting raised well to the best of our ability. So that's why this video has taken a little longer than I had anticipated. I meant to get this out Saturday or Sunday before the week started, so I apologize for that. I'm just a little behind from everything that's been happening the last few days. So hopefully that won't hinder anything in terms of the time I get this stuff up. Like I said, I want to get these videos out to you a little bit more frequently for better communication, and the Remind app will help us do that too. So that's what's going on right now. The other thing I want to do with this video is just kind of let you know what we're doing with these readings and how you can consider them. So, because there will be a paper due on these readings that we're going over this week and next week, and I want to let you know a little bit about how I want you to read them, how I want you to discuss them this week in the discussion board. So it says right now that I only want you to discuss Ellen DeGeneres, but I do want you to kind of talk a little bit about the Marilyn Manson piece as well. So what I want to go over with you right now, just so we're on the same page, is the rhetorical situation and what I want you to understand about it. So the paper that you're going to write that's going to be due in the end of week 5 it's really kind of like an analytical compare-contrast essay where you're going to pick a couple of these writings that we're looking at or these videos that we're looking at, and just sort of compare and contrast the ways that these writers or authors use rhetorical devices to their advantage. So we're going to focus on specifically the rhetorical situation, which is comprised of this graphic here. Sorry about that. So this is the rhetorical situation, or the rhetorical triangle. It is comprised of the writer delivers a message to an audience, and then and that creates a context or is housed within a context. And then ethos, logos, and pathos are devices that the writer can use to persuade his audience or reach out to his audience. So what I want to look at, and what I would like you to discuss in this first discussion board specifically, are these devices. So we'll get to genre a little bit more next week, but obviously these are the Manson piece is an article. The Ellen DeGeneres video is a graduation speech. So these are different genres of writing. They also use different rhetorical genres. So Marilyn Manson is using the argumentative genre of writing, and Ellen is using a couple different things. She's using narrative, she's using argumentation as well. So there's a lot going on with that, but we can talk about that more next week when we look at the other readings. So for this week, I want to focus more on how the writer delivers a message to their audience. For those of you that don't know anything about the Columbine shooting, so for the Marilyn Manson piece that you are working on as well, Marilyn Manson is responding to blame that was placed on him after the Columbine shooting in 1999. Some of you may not have even been born yet at that point. This was, at the time, a really huge deal. School shootings happen really frequently now, obviously, but they didn't happen as frequently 20 years ago. So this was really a unique event, and it was a very sort of scary event, and people didn't know what to do about it, and they needed someone to blame. So they started placing blame where they could, which we see all the time, right? Anytime a shooting happens, blame gets placed on violent video games and social media and parenting and education or lack thereof. Mental illness is a really big one, right? Radicalization, all these things are kind of the go-to scapegoats, right? But in this instance, I'll give you some context on what happened. So originally, this was thought to be a school shooting. It was actually planned initially as a bomb attack. Two kids that went to the school, who Manson mentions in the piece by their last name, they decided that they really wanted to be famous, make a name for themselves. So they had actually planned to bomb the school, and then when after the bombings happened, any survivors that got out, the two guys would be outside, ready to shoot them down, so there wouldn't be any survivors. And then they also rigged bombs up outside in the parking lot, so that when the emergency vehicles got there and first responders got there, those would go off as well. So this would effectively be just the biggest massacre that was their plan in American history. And very fortunately, the bombs did not go off for, I can't remember the specific reason. I can't remember if the detonators didn't work, or there was something with the timers, or they didn't rig them correctly. But the bombs did not go off, and so they had to kind of improvise, and that's when they went into the school and held a bunch of people hostage in the cafeteria. Now, they were wearing long black trench coats and a lot of other black stuff. They looked kind of, I think, strange, obviously. You've probably heard stories about them asking about their religion and if they believed in God, and then shooting some of the students. And what happened after was a student who was there was talking about the kids that committed the crime, and they had mentioned that the kids are weird, they wear black, they listen to Marilyn Manson, and that took off. A lot of people latched onto that. If you're not familiar with Marilyn Manson's work, I think there's that Bowling for Columbine video that I've posted that kind of gives you a short clip. You can also Google him if you've never seen him before. And so what he's doing in that article that you read or will read is really defending himself and kind of pointing out why this is not really his fault at all. Not necessarily at all, but he's kind of saying, like, be careful where you place blame before looking at yourself, right? he without sin should cast the first stone, right? So he's sort of using religion against the religious groups that were opposing him, that were blaming him for the crime, his music for blaming his music. The media latched onto this, senators latched onto this, and just he got the full brunt of this. And so that article is him really reaching out in a different manner than television media. So when you see what he looks like in person, you may begin to understand why he chose print media over television media. I think it is a good way, an effective way to get his message out there without being harassed by questions from the media and analysts. He's able to sort of make his case with evidence as he does that. So what he's doing effectively, so go back to this real quick. So if Marilyn Manson, and again I apologize for the quality here, but Marilyn Manson's our writer, right? And he is reaching out to his audience here, which is mostly religious detractors, people on the right, but a lot of people in the culture in general. And his message then is a defense. It's also all of the logical arguments that he uses. So when he brings up the Bible, for instance, and how violent the Bible is, when he talks about how violent our own president is at the time, which was Clinton, shooting bombs off overseas, when he's talking about the violence of the everyday, the fact that his band was actually a critique of the culture's sort of devotion to this violence, where Marilyn Manson is an amalgamation of Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson, a woman who died tragically, but was adored by everybody, and then this guy that killed people very tragically, but both of them being cultural figures because of these tragedies, and he's really talking about how the media and the culture doesn't want to solve the problem. They just want a scapegoat, right? And so one of the things that's interesting about this that I want you to think about is consider how effective his message is. It's very pointed, but it's not overly angry, right? He's obviously being kind of brash, but he's not, I don't think he's overstepping necessarily. He has a point to make, and I think he does make it. Now, how effective he is at that, you can kind of talk about in the discussion. As for Ellen DeGeneres, and what I would like you to do with these two pieces, Ellen is just giving a graduation speech, right? So we're very familiar with the genre of graduation speeches. They kind of follow a very common pattern. They usually tell stories. They impart wisdom on the audience. They're speaking out to a general audience. So in that rhetorical situation, you have usually a celebrity or someone famous or well-known or a very successful person, someone maybe that was successful at the school. And that's typically who the writer is in those situations, or the speaker is in those situations. Their message is usually some kind of wisdom they're trying to impart. In Ellen's case, it's more or less be true to yourself. That's her main message that she's trying to deliver. And she uses events from her life as logic for this message and evidence for this message. She uses her experiences and just some of the things that happened to her kind of tragically. She also uses humor to connect with the audience being more general. These are students and family members of the students, people that are kind of finding themselves in a transitionary period, so they need advice on how to transition, especially into the big wide world. So usually that's the context there, right? That these people are transitioning into the unknown, the real world. The speaker is trying to impart some kind of wisdom that they can take with them into that unknown, right? So that's the context there. That is the relationship of graduation speeches between writer, message, and audience. Now, how ethos, logos, pathos play into this, and some things I would like you to consider as you talk in this discussion. Ethos refers again to the credibility or the character of the writer or speaker. For Marilyn Manson, his credibility here is that he's defending himself, right? So he's the one that was being attacked and blamed. So his credibility is that he's defending himself. Also, he is a cultural critic, even though he's a songwriter, and maybe it would be more beneficial for him to write a song or more credible for him to write a song. what his music does is critique the culture. So his defense is a cultural critique. He's not going outside of his own boundaries here. He's doing something that he's well known for, and that adds to his credibility and his character. The fact that he uses print journalism helps with his character too, because people are not distracted by his makeup and his hair, which isn't a big deal, but at the time, and especially given the circumstances, it was more of a big deal, and so that would have been more distracting if he went on TV and everyone's pointing at him like, "Look at you, listen to your music, tell me how you're not to blame for this." So using that genre and that medium of print journalism really helps build his credibility and character as well. Ellen's character and credibility is really just that she's famous and successful, right? So in a graduation speech, you want somebody that is well known, they're successful, they've overcome adversity, and Ellen kind of fits that bill. She talks about how she was fired from her job because she came out as a lesbian, and they fired her. So her credibility in this situation is that she overcame that circumstance. She was able to come back from that. She was able to rebuild her name and her brand and she has won the most People's Choice Awards ever, I think, and is like the most popular talk show host next to Oprah ever. So she's obviously successful. She meets that credibility standard. In terms of her character, she's obviously a good person. She gives away stuff to her audience all the time. She's very caring. She even has some good messages in there that kind of speak to her ethics and her morality and stuff like that too. So her character is good as well. So we can trust this person because they're successful. They've been through the ringer a time or two. They've had experiences that some people in the audience may be going through. And so that makes us trust them. That makes us want to listen to them in that context of, I'm going into the real world. What advice for me do you have? And Ellen's there to give it. In terms of logos, the message here, Ellen obviously saying, be true to yourself. Manson saying, look at yourself before you place blame on me. Ellen uses some more anecdotal evidence. She's obviously using personal experiences for her evidence. She's using the experience with her girlfriend's death, the experience of going on Johnny Carson's show, the experience of coming out on television, of being fired afterwards, of coming back from that and having a successful talk show, which she may be ending soon. I heard, so I don't know if that's true or not. But so her logical evidence is a little bit more anecdotal or sort of story based. Marilyn Manson's is a little bit more direct. It's not anecdotal necessarily, but it's also not hard statistical evidence, right? He's not giving these solid facts, but he is giving some really good bits of information there that support his argument when he talks about violence in the Bible and violence of the president, and the way that the culture of our country likes to sort of romanticize violence and tragedy. That's his logic, right? That's the reasoning that he's using to make his case and say why this isn't just on him, it's on all of us, right? Pathos then, again, is the emotional appeals, how the writer or speaker reaches out to the audience. Ellen DeGeneres uses humor a lot, right? She's obviously reaching out to her audience and is very connectable. Everyone knows Ellen, everyone likes Ellen, so she doesn't have too much work to do there. Marilyn Manson obviously using a little bit more anger. His tone's a little bit more stern and frustrated, but he's not overly angry. So he's sort of appealing to that particular aspect of emotion. He's frustrated. You should also be frustrated, and this is why. They consider the audience as well. Ellen obviously speaking to students as well as family members in the audience. She obviously reaches out to them a couple times. You'll notice in the video. So when she does that, when she talks to parents, when she reaches out to the students, she says things like taking 21 shots of tequila. Right? Those jokes are meant to reach out to them, connect with them, say, I know what you've been through. even though she's never been to college, she shares experiences and stories that they can kind of relate to on some level. So that's what we mean by pathos, sort of reaching out to the audience there and connecting with them through the emotions. And then the context of both those pieces we kind of already talked about, right? So that's essentially how the relationship of the rhetorical situation works, right? Keep in mind that ethos, logos, pathos are not synonyms for writer, message, audience. They just correspond to those things. Ethos, logos, and pathos, credibility, logic, and emotional appeals are rhetorical devices used to persuade an audience, but they sort of relate to writer, message, and audience in that rhetorical situation. Excuse me. So that's kind of the rundown, the background information on this stuff, and some ways to consider it. What I want you to do in this discussion is really sit down and think about what did you like, what did you not like. Look at the worksheet. I know that you only needed to do it for Manson, but also consider it as you talk about Ellen DeGeneres here too. Consider, what worked and what didn't. What rhetorical device does she use better, right? Is she using ethos, logos, or pathos more effectively, or does she sort of use all three effectively, and why? And then in terms of Manson, how I want you to bring Manson into this is, I want you to really look at and compare and contrast the two, right? Which author or speaker do you think is more effective? Which message do you think is more important or effective? And also try to connect it to your own lives too, right? So the reason I chose these pieces in particular is because, we deal with school shootings really frequently now, and that wasn't the case 20 years ago. And, this doesn't seem like we've learned a lot. Manson's piece is kind of almost seems like it was written just a couple years ago, not 20 years ago. 20 years ago this year. So consider that. How does it sort of relate to you in your life now? Ellen obviously saying, be true to yourself, which is obviously a little flowery and it sounds like it's just from like an inspirational quote website. But that's the nature of graduation speeches, right? You're trying to be inspirational and get people motivated to go out there and hit the ground running once they're done, right? So consider how they do this. Consider how they reach the audience. I have some questions here that I want you to answer below, but how are they effective? Is one more effective than the other in delivering this message? How do they use ethos, logos, and pathos to their advantage? Or maybe they don't. That's up for you to decide. But just try to compare and contrast them a little bit and just go from there. Like I said, I have some directed questions below, but I want you to get in the habit of talking about them together, because the essay that you're going to write, that I'll introduce in like a week or two, is really tying together multiple essays here, or multiple writings in some form, just to see how writers deliver this message. So focus on that stuff. Make sure that you text at SG Winecoop to 81010 so you can join my class. I'll see when you join too, so I'll know if you join or not. Make sure that is the case. And be on the lookout for puppy pictures. I will be keeping everybody in the loop and letting you all know how that goes. So I am getting used to it. Haven't slept much in a few days, neither has my girlfriend. So we're kind of day to day right now, but they're doing good. They're really cute. For those of you that want to know, they are mutts. They sort of an accidental pregnancy. The mother is Boston Terrier and Schnauzer mix, and then the daddy is he is Lab mixed with Catahoula, which is like a hound dog. So big dog, not so big dog, which I think is part of the reason the pregnancy was complicated. So the puppies kind of look like they were made by committee. They have the ears of a Schnauzer, the face of a terrier, the tail of a Lab, and the coat of a Catahoula. So they don't look like they don't really look like dogs so much right now. But they're cute, and they are living the life, eating and sleeping all day. So I'll keep you updated as they grow and we get to know them. So please, if you have any questions, you can contact me through the Remind app. If you want to set up an office hour meeting, again, I won't be on campus during my normal office hours times until the puppies get a little older. But we can set up a meeting. I live really close to campus, so as long as my schedule works out, we can get something set up fairly quickly. So if you need to reach out to me or you're confused about anything with the class, we can do that. So I have a camera that I'm going to see if the quality is a little better. And then hopefully the videos will be a little bit better. I'm working on upgrading the software on my computer as well, so they won't be as grainy and dark as they are now. Other than that, good luck. I'll see you in the message boards, and I will respond to these. I'll be a little bit more active this time. I would have responded more for the introduction, so I apologize for that. But with everything that happened over the weekend, I just kind of lost track of everything. So I will be more active in the message boards this time around, just to make sure everybody's sort of on the same page. But good luck. Hopefully everyone has a good discussion. And please, please, please feel free to voice your opinion as long as you're being respectful to other people in the discussion board. If you like it or you don't like it, if you agree or don't agree, make that known. Just please use logos, right? Use logic and reasoning to support your opinion and your ideas, right? That's what I want you to get in the habit of doing for this class. So without further ado, good luck. I'll see you around. So.